Hi there, everyone. It's Mrs. Wenning. I am sorry I'm not with you guys today. I actually broke my wrist this weekend, and I am going to be at the doctor on Monday. So I wanted to share this lesson with you on the recording so that we could work on the first part together, and then you and your partner could work on the second part after you know what to do better. So this page right here you should have in front of you, and I just want to remind you of our learning target today. And the learning target is I can identify and explain the significance of the rhetorical devices Dr. Martin Luther King uses to convey his message and demonstrate my understanding with annotations on my copy of the letter. So a couple important things here. We're going to understand, we're going to be able to identify those rhetorical devices and techniques. We're going to start to understand their significance. We are also going to demonstrate this by the annotations that we make on our handout. Hopefully you have shared your annotations and submitted your I2 poem to the substitute, and then you should have watched this letter from Birmingham Jail video that gave you great historical background information, and that historical background information should go in these areas. The background info notes is what was going on during that time in history in Birmingham or in the South. And then the rhetorical situation is simply, why is Martin Luther King Jr. writing this letter? What's the purpose? And who's the audience? So you want to make sure that you have that completed as well. And I want to go through this part one together so you have an idea of how you should be thinking and what you should be looking for as you go on to part two. So let's take a look. It says part one, highlight the language that King uses to establish ethos with the 8 white clergymen. And if you remember correctly, ethos establishes credibility. And this whole first part is really interesting because Martin Luther King Jr. is not only establishing credibility but almost superiority because of his connotations, what the words kind of imply. It's really a cool, he's just really a smart guy, and it was amazing kind of what this says when you know what to look for. So let's just start out, and if I were you, I would say I would highlight this first part. In his salutation, he says, "My dear fellow clergymen," right? So already he's establishing the fact that he is one of them, like my fellow clergymen. I am a pastor, you're a pastor, we are of the same. We are the same. We are on equal ground. And then he goes on and he says, while confined here in the Birmingham City Jail, I came across your recent statement calling your present activities unwise and untimely. So I like here a couple things. While he uses kind of much more sophisticated language, he doesn't say while I'm locked up or, you guys locked me up here. He says, while confined here in the Birmingham City Jail. And I love how he says this. I came across your recent statement. Like, it wasn't like, he just sort of stumbled on it. It wasn't like this big important thing that he had to address. He came across it. And your present and he says, calling our present activities unwise and untimely. And so you can see here, he put that in quotes. So I would highlight this. Okay. And he says, seldom, if ever, do I pause to answer criticism of my work and ideas. If I sought to answer all of the criticisms that cross my desk, so it's interesting, he's reminding us, I work at a desk. I have my own desk and office. He says, my secretaries, and not just one secretary, he has multiple secretaries, would be engaged in little else in the course of the day. And I would have no time for constructive work. So I love this part too, because this implies that what he's doing, responding to these allegations and to the racism, is not constructive work. He's kind of like, it would be a waste of my time to deal with the people who are sending complaints about me. Okay, I have more and constructive things to do. And he says, but since I feel that you are men of genuine goodwill, and your criticisms are sincerely set forth, I want to try to answer your statement in what I hope will be patient and reasonable terms. All right, so with the patient and reasonable terms, this is interesting because it's almost as if he's talking to them as if they are children. I'm going to be patient with you, and I'm going to talk to you in reasonable terms, so hopefully you can understand what we're doing. And so this, even though he doesn't say anything that's condescending here, the tone, or kind of putting himself above these men, these other clergymen, the tone is like, we're equal, and I'm kind of, taking my time to help you because you can't understand. And so I thought that was really interesting. And he tells them, he says, I feel that you are men of genuine goodwill. He compliments them here too, which is a strategy in itself. He's not calling them names. He's not saying anything nasty. He's like, I feel like you're sincere in what you're saying, so I'm going to help you out. All right, then it says, I think I should indicate why I am here in Birmingham, since you have been influenced by the argument of outsiders coming in. And again, this was from their letter. Okay, just like this one is up here, or this one up here is from their letter. And unwise and untimely, outsiders coming in. He says, I have the honor of serving as the president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. So here he's establishing more ethos, more credibility. He is the leader, the president of this conference. And it's not just any conference, it's the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which the clergymen who are Christian, I think there was one rabbi on there, should understand. Here's this association that you all clergymen claim to be. Well, I'm the president of my chapter. He says, an organization operating in every southern state with headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. So this isn't just some little thing he made up. This is a big organization, and it has headquarters in Atlanta, and it's in every southern state. He says, we have some 85 affiliate organizations all across the South, one being the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights. And so again, he's throwing out, here's what I'm working on. I'm working on human rights. You're writing a letter to stir up, to enforce segregation. I'm working for human rights. So it says, whenever necessary and possible, we share staff, educational, and financial resources with our affiliates. Several months ago, our local affiliate here in Birmingham invited us to be on call to engage in a non-violent direct action program if we deemed such, or if such were deemed necessary. We readily consented, and when the hour came, we lived up to our promises, right? So we promised them that we would help them, and then we did. So I am here, along with several members of my staff. Again, he is a serious person. He's busy. He has staff. He has secretaries. Way more than, much more than the ministers who wrote the letter would have. He says, because we were invited here. Here's my credibility. Here's why I'm here. He says, I am here because I have organizational ties here. I didn't just come on down uninvited to stir up trouble. I wasn't an outsider coming in. I came in because I was invited. So here it says, how does King establish his response to the claim that he was an outside agitator? All right, so we've talked about that up there. Go ahead, you can pause this and write your answer in there. I would type it, but I can't type because my left arm is broken. So go ahead and type that, your answer there, and you can pause, and then once you're done, we can move on. All right, so you should have answered this up here. Now we're going to move on. He says, but more basically, and notice we have alliteration here. Make that a different color. Alliteration, but more basically, I am in Birmingham, more B's, because injustice is here. Just as the 8th century prophets left their little villages and carried their "Thus saith the Lord" far beyond the boundaries of their hometowns, and just as the Apostle Paul left his little village of Tarsus and carried the gospel of Jesus Christ to practically every hamlet and city of the Greco-Roman world, I too am compelled to carry the gospel of freedom beyond my particular hometown. Like Paul, I must constantly respond to the Macedonian call for aid. Okay, so this is kind of brilliant in that, he's talking to his audience is clergymen. What better way to provide credibility to what you're saying than to connect it to the Bible? And so that's what he's doing here. He says, just as the 8th century prophets left their little villages, okay, the apostles, and carried their "Thus saith the Lord" far beyond the boundaries of their hometown. And just as the Apostle Paul left his little village of Tarsus, okay, and carried the gospel of Jesus Christ. I mean, he's bringing in the big guns here, talking about Jesus Christ to practically every hamlet of the Roman world. He says, I'm highlighting in those in the wrong color. He says, I too am prepared to do that. And that I too kind of reminds me of that I too poem that we just read. Connects to that. I don't think it's an allusion to that. I think it's probably a very happy coincidence, happy accident here. And he says, like Paul. So he's saying, I'm like Paul, who in the Bible went out to help the Macedonians who called for his help. He says, that's who I'm emulating. Okay. And so he says, moreover, and I love the transitional words. This is beautifully written, very sophisticated, reminding them that he is educated, that he is extremely intelligent, and that in itself is ethos. I mean, just the way he's writing it establishes ethos. He says, I am cognizant. So instead of saying I know, he says, I am cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned with what happens in Birmingham. So he says, you know what, my state, I'm aware that there is an interrelatedness of all the communities and states. Like we are all intermixed. So whatever happens in your state or your community is going to affect what's happening in my community. And so he says he cannot in good conscience, he cannot sit idly by. He just can't sit and watch this in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens here in Birmingham. What happens here in Birmingham is going to be related to what happens in Atlanta. He says, and this is one of the most famous lines, I love this line, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And this is an example of, what do you think? We've been learning about it. There's some opposites here. So we have antithesis. We have injustice anywhere, and I'm just going to underline that, is a threat to justice everywhere. So that is antithesis. Oops, I struck it out. That is antithesis right there for you, where he's saying injustice anywhere is a threat to justice.